Hi everyone, welcome back, or welcome for the first time to the Communication and Conflict YouTube channel, promoting mindful communication and growth through conflict. This recording is also going to be put out on an Anchor podcast as well, and I'll put a link into the information below. But the Contemplations on Conflict series are all going out both as videos on YouTube, but also as podcasts on Anchor. So today's saying for contemplating in relation to conflict is: the aim of an argument or discussion should not be victory but progress. And that's by Joseph Joubert, who was a French guy born in 1754. He was a French moralist and essayist, remembered today largely for his pensées, his thoughts, which were published posthumously. Cool, lots of P's in that. The significance of this statement, really, for me, it's kind of similar to the last two contemplations, really, which is that if we get into an argument with the determination we're going to win and we're going to beat the other person, and that's our kind of intention, it kind of means we all end up losing, because not only does it mean we have to be fixed in our position, we have to never move from our position, even in the face of new insights and understandings that we may or may not have been open to listening to. But also it just means the issue will either continue on and on and on until we change our intention to being towards seeking progress, or eventually it just kind of dies out and doesn't get talked about anymore and becomes a kind of taboo subject, because we don't want to get back into that battle that we see it as being about, if all we're looking for is to win, to be victorious. And in a way it kind of interests me in a more contemporary sense, because nowadays on YouTube there seems to be simply kind of videos put out where, for example, it can be said this person has being recorded destroying another person, as if it's kind of a destruction of the other person's argument that's being portrayed. Or schooled is another phrase that I've seen, or there are other phrases, I can't bring them to mind at the moment, they'll probably come as we go through, but they're all indicating a sense that one person's point of view is defeating the other person's point of view. And obviously what a lot of these are associated with are kind of political positions, or perhaps moral positions, or other positions on things which may be considered more almost scientific, although I think the very fact that there is this kind of polarity about things suggests it's usually more a subjective interpretation of something scientific, and people have kind of fallen out over this. And what it always leads to is this practice of labeling each other. So we're either right wing or we're left wing, or we're Brexiteers, or we're Ramoners or Remainers, or whatever label is attached to people, or we're social justice warriors, or we're I can't remember what the kind of opposite to that is, but it's kind of people who are kind of claim to be more kind of realistic and not head in the clouds, etc., which social justice warriors are portrayed as victim kind of mentalities, etc. So there's all these labels that are used to kind of polarize discussions, and when they're portrayed in that way, it's usually pretty clear that the argument or discussion is not seeking progress and learning and kind of creativity, it's seeking victory. And it kind of always reminds me of this phrase: the aim of an argument or discussion should not be victory but progress, by Joseph Joubert. I suppose sometimes the word should in itself is questionable. I think for me it's more about, if we want anything to change, then making our arguments and discussions being about victory means it's almost certainly not going to change. There won't be change. There'll be this polarization and entrenchment on both sides, where both say the others have got to change and we're not going to. And then we get these labels of right wing, left wing, etc., etc. Whatever the different labels are. I mean, in every situation there'll be a particular label that's used for each side about the other. And so if we're wanting progress, to take that approach is never going to lead to that kind of outcome. Progress is going to be about, in a sense, not getting attached to labels about the other person's point of view, and simply listening to what it is they have to say. It is the labels that often cause the entrenchment, because we get into a situation where if we change our view, it's as if we're betraying our label, whether to ourselves or in the eyes of others, who might also see us as fitting a certain label. And then we're accused of kind of hypocrisy or contradiction, when actually it may simply be that we've come to a different understanding through listening to the other person's point of view. And when we attach a sense of having lost, as if it's about victory or loss in such situations, it means there won't be progress, because we'll stay stuck in our position, even in the face of new information that tells us that our point of view may be adaptable. Let me put it this way: it's not like we have to completely let go of our point of view, but we can reconsider different aspects and kind of consequences of our point of view through listening to other people's presentations of their point of view. And that's the way that creativity and change and innovation all happen when a discussion is focused on progress. It's not about I've got to be right and win my argument over you and you've got to lose. It's about me having a perspective, but then being open to hearing that you have a different perspective. And it doesn't mean so I've got to change my perspective, but being aware that there are other viewpoints that might inform my decisions about how I go forward about a particular thing. And if I'm influential on others, then how I decide for others to go forward on particular things. But if I'm determined to be proven right, even in the face of things which say actually there's some problems with that view and some consequences of that view which could be damaging, but it's more important to me that I win the argument than that I actually create the best answer to a situation, then in many ways it's almost counter to the whole idea of progress, because we have information in front of us which tells us to do something differently or reconsider certain things, but we still progress anyway, because some people might say it's our ego, I suppose, but sometimes it's not just about our personal ego. It's sometimes about the pressures and expectations and vested interests which might also be influencing the possibility of change in a given situation anyway. I think there are many kind of situations that could be called to mind which are being discussed nowadays, which in many people's eyes in a sense could have changed 50 years ago, but various different things are in place which mean, even though it seems the most obvious way forward or the most effective way forward, it doesn't happen for reasons which aren't directly related to the situation itself and coming up with the best result for it. There are influences from other sources which mean there are obstacles to those changes being made. And if we're only taking a victory type approach to it, we might win a local discussion with someone over a particular thing, but that doesn't mean to say that means that everybody else with a vested interest in the situation will also accept that the argument is lost, so to speak. So therefore they're not willing to change. So things stay stuck even in the face of fairly obvious benefits to making changes. And this is very much what happens when the aim of an argument or discussion is victory, and it's not focused on progress, where we make and this is where it relates very much to one of the earlier contemplations videos, where it's the conflict between right and wrong, where it is that I have to be right and you have to be wrong, instead of we both have a shared problem here. You see it from your perspective, I see it from my perspective. What can we do to create a better way forward in this, so that it's not about me being right and you being wrong? It's about there being a shared problem that we can cooperatively work together on. And sometimes I might say the word cooperatively, and people say, yeah, but people aren't cooperative. They're always negative and perhaps worse words they might want to use. But the point is, it doesn't have to be that we actually like the people we're working with. We're just recognizing that there are more important things than whether our personal relationship with someone is pleasant or amicable or friendly. It's obviously nicer if it is, but it's not a requirement for progress to be made, because if it were, it would be back to this thing about victory instead of progress. Our focus will be on, I don't like you, so therefore I'm not going to agree to you, rather than I don't agree to your point of view because it's not how I see it, it's because I don't like you, or and I'm not going to agree to what you say because I don't like you, rather than because actually I have a different perspective, and let's keep this about the issue rather than our personal difficulties with each other. And as can sometimes happen, kind of tangents come to me about this, and for me this is one of the many reasons why in separation and divorce the opportunity is there often for people to work together over something which has been a broken relationship, but the nature of how divorce and separation is dealt with is about victory. It's not about progress. And even where mediation is offered in this context, unfortunately it's probably the most inappropriately delivered approach to mediation that I know of, where actually it doesn't support people in creating progress. It kind of, in a sense, maintains the adversarial nature of how people are interacting, because it doesn't allow for people to work on their future parenting relationship, simply because that doesn't get covered by legal requirements, and so for some strange reason it's excluded from mediation in divorce and separation. So it's one of these areas where actually there isn't a kind of a standing back from and looking in on what might be meant by the aim of an argument or discussion should not be victory but progress, and various other sayings that kind of can inform this kind of thinking in such situations. So what might be your own experiences of this? In what situations have you found yourself perhaps feeling that you need to win an argument, and that actually it hasn't really led to progress? It's led to a sense of stubbornness on the side of the other person, and probably or possibly in return their sense of stubbornness on the side of you. And sometimes it can be the case that people just decide, well, okay, that's my view and that's it. But I think sometimes if that is the case, it risks becoming that the consequences of that stuckness then kind of transfers to other situations, where we think to ourselves, well, in that situation they were too stubborn to listen to me or see my point or accept that I was right, and so therefore they're going to do the same in this situation. So while we can feel that we were right and they were wrong in a certain argument, but we've decided to let it go, the question is, have we really let it go, or does that then carry over to our relationship with that person, or in that situation perhaps with other people of a similar mind perhaps as we might see it, and so we kind of come to a kind of dead end with progress with people in other situations as well, simply because in the original context we haven't been open to looking at progress. We've only looked at victory. So I think for me, with any of these things, it is about, well, what really is the significance of this? Does it have actually a resonance with our own or my own situation? The aim of an argument or discussion should not be victory, but progress. So, what can I learn in any given situation about my own, uh, perhaps holding to a particular position? Does it actually work for me, or is there something very personal that I'm thinking about the other person that means it's more important that I feel I'm standing up to them? Um, and in a sense that there's nothing wrong with that if we're clear that actually it's our viewpoint that we're standing up to, rather than simply as a kind of a personality issue irrespective of the viewpoint, because perspectives and viewpoints can change. But if we're kind of resisting or not willing to listen to the other person's point of view simply because of who they are, then in some contexts it's actually going to limit our own understanding and our own opportunity for progress in the situation. We're doing it more about, because it's more about them than it is about the thing that we're discussing. So are there situations where I might find that actually I could progress if I was willing to just take my own space back to stop and think, well, actually, what am I wanting in this situation? What will enable me to get progress in this? And is constantly having kind of stuck rows with this other person, demonizing them, giving them a label, refusing to listen to their point of view because I'm so certain that I'm right. Does that actually work for me? And in many ways, this is what both mediation and conflict coaching offer people as an opportunity. In a sense, the whole beauty for me about mediation is that I can sometimes provide a space for people who have, sometimes literally for years, but often for certainly months and at least 1, 2, maybe 3 years, been stuck in a toing and froing battle with each other over something. And obviously often there's other people involved as well, but it will be focused over perhaps two particular people, and their focus has always been on victory and not progress. And so in a context like mediation, where mediation can't serve a purpose of victory if it's used appropriately. I mentioned an exception to that earlier, but I think that's because there are various adversarial influences on separation mediation that mean it makes it very difficult. But in most contexts, mediation offers the opportunity where actually there's nothing about it that can be about winning or losing, because the mediator's not there to give a view about who's right and who's wrong. So it's really just an opportunity for people to say in detail what they're upset by, what it is they want to be different, to hear the other person's point of view, to ensure that it is the case that they hear each other's point of view, because the structure of the mediation meeting ensures that's possible. The purpose of the mediation process rather is always to help people to think, well, what could be different in the future that would work better for you? So it's always focused on the possibilities of progress. In a sense, irrespective of whether even within the meeting itself progress is seen to be made, what it does is it enables people to see that it's possible for them to have a discussion which isn't aimed towards victory, it's aimed towards progress. So that's where it again comes back to Joubert's phrase, the aim of an argument or discussion should not be victory but progress. And the point about mediation is there's nothing about it as a process that supports victory as an aim. Even if people turn up with that intention, the whole process itself is not about victory. It's not about a winner and a loser. It's not about a finding for or a finding against, because it's not about making decisions about who's in the right and who's in the wrong, or whose argument is correct and whose argument is wrong. It's about acknowledging that the viewpoints are simply different, and that there's an issue over which there are viewpoints which are different, and that at present that's causing a difficulty, so the focus is only on moving forward. And similarly for conflict coaching, even though the other person may not be present, the focus of the discussion is always about what will help there to be movement forward. It's not about finding a way of defeating and demonizing and proving wrong the other person. It's about helping people to stand back from and recognize, well, what is it you're really wanting that's different from this situation, and how might you be able to support that being possible, whether the other person cooperates in that, or even if they don't, what can mean you get what you need from this situation that isn't focused on defeating the other person, and the likely resistance and obstruction that would arise from that. So again, the whole essence of that statement, the aim of an argument or discussion should not be victory but progress, to me shows how much there's a recognition of what the possibilities are in a conflict, for creativity and change. But in some situations, and not all by any means, in some situations the energy and focus is only on victory, and it's such a waste of energy. And when I say that, I guess sometimes people might think I'm making a moral judgment of people who do that. I'm not. I'm recognizing that there are various reasons why we want to kind of hold to our view and not let in other views, because there are so many things that we have invested in holding to the view. But really the point of conflict is it brings up the possible reasons as to why with some things we have to let go of those views, and it's hard to do. It's difficult to acknowledge that maybe our view and our past behaviours associated with that view are not working anymore, even if it felt like they did in the past. But ultimately, if we're going to move forward for ourselves and possibly for the interaction with the other person, we need to see arguments and discussions as opportunities for progress, and not things that we use to defeat the other person. Because the whole point of defeat anyway, even if there is a sense that we've won, is that we've always got to keep looking over our shoulder, because we're going to get attacked again later. There isn't resolution, there isn't creativity, there isn't movement forward. It's staying stuck and constantly having to look out for the next attack that's going to come. So everything about this statement really summarizes what the potential is, the benefit is, the opportunity that there is in conflict and arguments and discussions about a conflict. But it also acknowledges that in some situations we will often get so stuck in and so stressed by and so worn out by our commitment to victory instead of progress, that I think Joubert simply identifying that that's a common phenomenon. But to be able to stand back from our situation and think, well, am I focusing on progress or am I focusing on victory, is a very useful and ultimately I would say, or hoped to be, beneficial way of looking at any difficult situation that I find myself in. And hopefully the mediation and conflict coaching that I provide for people gives them a chance to do the same. So I hope you found that interesting. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Please share this video or podcast if you're listening on Anchor, with other people. If you want to hear future contemplations, please subscribe, and obviously you'll then get notifications of them, particularly if you click the little bell next to the subscribe button on YouTube. As I say, if you've got any views or opinions or objections to what I've said, or you agree with it, or it resonates with you, please put them in the comments section below. I hope you join me for the next Contemplations on Conflict. Thanks very much for listening. Bye bye.